Welcome to Accessibility Now, the podcast about disability rights in the state of Georgia. Accessibility Now is produced by the statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. I'm your host, Matt Shedd. My guest today is Jimmy Peterson, the Executive Director for the Georgia Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. He's also a person who is deaf himself. We talk today about some of the services that the GCDHH provides. We also discuss some significant cultural events that they are involved in, and some of the nuances of communicating in American Sign Language. This interview was conducted through an interpreter. Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing great this morning. I'm really glad we got a chance to connect.
Yes, me too.
Why don't we start off with you just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your role?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Jimmy Peterson. I am the director for the Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I've done that for the past 10 years. I am deaf myself, talking to an interpreter.
So, can you tell us about the journey that took you to this role?
Sure, of course. I have always had to, advocate for myself, especially in the deaf and hard of hearing community. Been an advocate, and this position opened 10 years ago. I interviewed, I really got the job, and it was a fantastic fit for myself. Their mission, their goals, their love for the deaf and hard of hearing community, has been great. They always try to empower and give empowerment to the deaf and hard of hearing community all around Georgia.
That's great. You mentioned that you've always had to advocate for yourself. Can you kind of give us a view of what your growing up years, education, employment has been like in terms of how you've advocated for yourself and how you've gotten to this really big job?
Yeah, so I grew up always having barriers, throughout life, and I know how the system works. All right, I would invest in myself, my frustrations, my all that stuff. Breaking down barriers with this job has been very helpful to me, myself, our community, and even today, it's still people just are not aware. They don't understand. And I'm just here to give advocacy to them, to our clients as well, and just walk with them as we break down barriers. And then that way they can develop themselves and become successful.
So do you have people that come into your office there that you help advocate for, or do you do that mainly remotely, or what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, it's a variety. Right now, our office is here in Atlanta. Most of our clients do live in the Atlanta area. Few do come to the office, but it can be remote. It can be fully virtual. Some of our staff do work from home in different cities, like, let's see, McKinnon or North Georgia. We have staff that work there. We meet with businesses, provide different services, advocacy, training to service the different hard of hearing community throughout Georgia.
So can you tell us what are some of the biggest barriers that you deal with on a regular basis that you help people kind of overcome?
I would say, obviously, communication, especially within the medical field. Actually, a variety of services, getting interpreting services. We really advocate for that. It's, required by the ADA to give reasonable accommodations, whether that be interpreters, captions. Clients struggle because they may not know how to work with the providers to get that access. And of course, providers can be very stubborn at times. So we provide that advocacy and remind them of their legal responsibilities. Not to, threaten to be mean, but again, just to give them the ability and have access. Or, deaf and hard of hearing people who get a job, there's a lot of frustration that goes into that. So we might provide ASL classes for their place of employment or where they work. That way the barriers are hopefully a little less if some of the coworkers can sign. Just community ASL classes. People just become more aware of the barriers that deaf and hard of hearing people face, and so it becomes less and less.
That makes sense. So, do you do you connect people with interpreters yourself in your office, or do you go to the employer and make them aware of the requirements and they're responsible for providing the interpreter, or is it a variety?
I think for interpreter requests, we do have quite a few agencies here in Georgia, interpreting agencies where they can call in an interpreter. Deaf and hard of hearing people, and we are not responsible for bringing our own interpreters. We do educate a lot of businesses on how to use the interpreter, how to get the interpreter, where to get the interpreter. Like for instance, there's always a delay when you're using an interpreter, and for a lot of hearing people, that's very awkward. So we help them just become aware, and also talking to a deaf person. You don't talk to the interpreter ever. The interpreter is just the communication expert and the communication facilitator. And so we kind of advocate for that and teach people, teach businesses about that, and like those sort of cultural things too. Like, I don't know, how to give a deaf person's attention, what to do and not do, all that stuff.
That's great. And maybe we could use this as a little bit of an opportunity to be an educational tool, this conversation. And you could maybe fill us in on some of the things the cultural things or the communication guidelines you provide to businesses so that us hearing people can be better equipped to interact with a person who's deaf or hard of hearing.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. For example, this May, the last week of May, there's going to be a big national conference here in Atlanta. It's going to be about over 300 people. I'd say over half of them are going to be working in the field of mental health or rehab, and they've asked me to give a training to teach sign and some ASL and how to work with deaf and hard of hearing individuals rather than using an interpreter. Personally, so deaf and hard of hearing people usually feel pretty welcome in Atlanta, but that's not usually true with different businesses. We have those that will reach out to us, and we provide the cultural training for them.
So you mentioned not talking to the interpreter. Are there any other things that a person like me should know when communicating with a deaf person?
Sure. So now, I think, something that is kind of awkward for a lot of people, I tend to remember about eye contact, to not even look at the interpreter, focus on me, look at me. Don't, the interpreter, again, is just here to facilitate communication. They aren't involved in our discussion, aren't involved in our decisions. They have to be neutral.
So you mentioned that you have this big national conference coming up. I saw also that you all have every other year you have a Georgia conference. Is that right? DEAFest? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Right, yeah. Sure, of course. We established DEAFest. It's cultural, historical, and it's every 2 years. Each town or city knows that we have this, and I'm here. What it does is shows basically what the deaf has to offer. It can be performances, it can be art, it can be videotapes for sale, it can be whatever. Is that people have and do own businesses. They know how to run a business and they know how to perform, and so and a lot of hearing people are interested because it's beautiful. So it just is a way for people who are curious to be more immersed in deaf culture, in the maybe they want to be interpreters. Who knows? So next year it's going to be in Savannah, actually, and in 4 years it's going to be in Rome. So we're trying to just spread ourselves throughout the whole state.
How has the response been so far to those events?
Very positive, very very positive. We've had, oh my word, many different vendors. Also, people will buy equipment to help communicate with deaf and hard of hearing people while there. So we have, some things that are related just to children and children's stories, advocacy. It's been great. There's just a wave of information that we share with our community. Hearing parents who have deaf children also tend to come, and it kind of gives them hope. It's like, oh, whoa, my child can grow up and do this and be an actual successful adult. A lot of deaf and hard of hearing kids grow up feeling invisible. You know, they don't. You can see a wheelchair, you can see other disabilities, but with deafness and hard of hearing, you really don't see it until you try to converse with a person. So children don't see a lot of deaf and hard of hearing adults.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so this is something that people who can hear are encouraged to come to and really immerse themselves and educate themselves and really learn about the culture and how they can advocate as well.
Right, exactly. Yes, that's a big part of it. I wish we could do it every year in each city, but time and resources are limited. So yeah, we really want to grow it, help grow awareness, so people are just more and more comfortable, working with deaf and hard of hearing people, and have the ability then to hire them and give them opportunities.
Absolutely. Are there needs for more interpreters? Can you tell me a little bit about that situation and how the resources are there?
Nationwide, there's a large shortage of interpreters, yes. There's more and more, especially in the legal field, especially there. Right now, we have two colleges throughout the whole state of Georgia. They offer an interpreting training. Actually, both of them offer an interpreter training program. And then once you graduate, understand, and once you graduate, it doesn't mean you are 100% qualified to interpret everywhere, anywhere. It takes a few years to get your certification and to become a qualified interpreter.
I see. That makes sense. So it's a little bit of a long process to actually get there.
Yeah, because it's not, American Sign Language is so different. You have to not only practice expressive skills, but you have to, there's a lot that goes into it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the nuances of American Sign Language that people who don't know it why might be interested in? Like, are there ways that you tell jokes or humor or things like that that don't necessarily that people from the outside might not understand?
Sure. So with English, it has its own grammar and syntax and sentence structure. Same with, that's same with ASL. But they're both very, very different. Same when you're speaking a spoken language like Spanish or French, or the same with ASL. Also, other countries have their own signed languages. It's not a universal language. You know, ASL is very, very visual, and there are a lot of nuances that can be easily overlooked. As far as humor goes, for example, there's a very old joke in the deaf and hard of hearing community about a deaf person who can stop a train. They're stopped by a train, and they find a hitchhiker, pick up the hitchhiker, who's a hearing person, doesn't know sign, and the driver is speeding, and police pulls him over, and the deaf person indicates to the policeman, "I can't hear. I'm deaf," and so the policeman lets them go, and so that person keeps going and continues to speed. Then, after a while, they switch drivers, each of the hearing person, and the deaf person gets some sleep. So then, the hearing person gets pulled over by the cops, and he tries to say, "Oh, I'm deaf. I can't hear." He points to his ears because I'm deaf, and the policeman all of a sudden starts signing. "Oh, you're deaf. Oh, okay. My mom and dad are deaf." And the hearing man is like, "Oh my word, what do I do now?" So he immediately gets a ticket. It's a very old joke in the deaf community.
I like it. That's very funny. So are there regional, even throughout the United States, is there the equivalent to, accents, like different regional ways of signing that are different in Georgia versus in California or Maine or different parts of the country?
Yes, definitely, very much so. They're almost different dialects. The sign for strawberry, there's at least, let's see, one, two, three, four, at least 4 or 5 different signs for strawberry, depending on the region you're in. I'd say Northeast, also, they're known for signing a lot faster. In the South, it tends to be, more slow. But yes, very much regional.
Oh, that's interesting. That kind of matches spoken English too, that in the Northeast they're a little faster paced, and in the South we're a little bit we take our time with things. So, are there any
Right.
legal advocacy issues that you all are involved in your office?
Let's see. We haven't. There's another organization in Georgia, another advocacy office that is totally responsible for legal, and we tend to we'll write a letter or refer people over to them. But as of right now, we just do advocacy on specifically how to empower people themselves on different issues and getting access to services and breaking down barriers.
So, if you had a few things that you wanted the hearing population to know, what would they be?
I think first one would be deaf and hard of hearing people are not impaired. They're deaf or hard of hearing. Sometimes we use the words hearing impaired. No, they can do anything anyone else can do. You don't have to hear to be successful. We have lots of barriers that need to be brought down, yes, but that's the main thing. Also, deaf and hard of hearing people are really not that different from hearing people at all. They just can't hear. They just have a different way of communicating. Yes, they label us disabled because we can't hear, but that's not really, that doesn't prevent us from doing the same thing as a hearing person. Hearing people, I always encourage them to learn sign language because who knows, in the future, when they are older, their hearing may go. Well, then they have sign language in their back pocket. Or maybe they'll, heaven forbid, be in the hospital with a tube down their throat. They have sign language in their back pocket. Sign language would benefit so many people, not just the deaf and hard of hearing community, but everyone, being able to sign and communicate from a distance. It's going to benefit everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to offer you the opportunity to share anything that we haven't had a chance to touch on that you would like to share on this podcast before we wrap up.
Sure. No, you covered everything beautifully. I appreciate your questions. The Georgians here, we are a nonprofit agency. We depend on financial donations, grants, state, federal monies to keep running. We've been going strong for 35 years. We are here to provide advocacy, support, education, and everyone feel free to look at our website. You can learn more about the equipment we provide at no charge and set up for deaf and hard of hearing peoples. We offer interpreting services. We have a summer camp for deaf and hard of hearing individuals, 3 different camps actually. There are many services that we provide, and many hearing parents with deaf children, they don't know about that. So we need to get the word out. And I'd say more than half of our staff and our board are also deaf and hard of hearing themselves. So I think that's something our young people can look up to and see.
That's great. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated getting to learn from you and getting to connect with you.
No, thank you for the opportunity to chat. I look forward to meeting with you more.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and have a great day.
All right, you too. That's it for this episode of Accessibility Now. This podcast is produced by the statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. Special thanks to our guest, Jimmy Peterson, for participating in today's episode. And I'm your host, Matt Shedd, reminding you that a Georgia that includes everyone is better for all of us.